Imagine this, you're with a guy, and everything feels good. It feels exciting, but there's something about the way he looks at you in that moment, something deeper than just attraction. It's like he's silently begging you to turn up the heat, to push him, to take things from just passion to that place where it almost feels uncontrollable. That's the thing about roughness. Men crave it not just because of what it looks like or what it feels like physically, but because of what it does to their mind. It's not just about sex, it's about psychology. Here's the truth, men, no matter how tough they look on the outside, are still seeking permission to be vulnerable. And roughness, in the right context, gives them that. It allows them to lean into their primal side, to either unleash it fully or surrender it entirely. It's not just about being thrown around or about doing the throwing. It's about what that symbolizes. When a man begs for things to get rough, what he's really begging for is intensity. He wants to feel like he's with someone who can match his hunger, who won't just give him affection, but will give him fire. That's what lights him up. Think about it. In his day-to-day life, he's probably expected to keep it together. He's meant to be composed, calm, in control, the guy who doesn't crack under pressure. He has to show confidence at work, responsibility with his family, composure with his friends. But in private, behind closed doors, what he craves is the freedom to lose all of that composure. Roughness is a ticket out of his own head. It's a way of saying, I don't have to hold it all together here. I can just let go. And when he feels that, it's not just a turn on, it's a release. What makes this so powerful is that it's not just about him taking control. Sometimes, yes, men want to be the dominant one, to grab, to pin, to feel like they're claiming their partner in the most raw, unfiltered way. But other times, roughness means the complete opposite. It means you stepping in and showing him that he doesn't always have to lead, that you can take over, that you can push him past his comfort zone. And that's just as intoxicating to him, because it breaks the pattern of what he's used to. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Roughness is not about cruelty. It's not about harm. It's about intensity and passion. It's the look in your eyes when you push back against him. It's the scratch of nails down his back, the bite on his shoulder, the grip that tells him, you're not afraid to take what you want. All of those things are small signals to him that you're not just there. You're all in. You're as hungry as he is. And men beg for that because it validates their deepest need, to know they're not alone in their desire. Let me tell you something that most guys won't admit out loud. What terrifies men is the idea of being too much. That if they unleash all of their passion, all of their hunger, you won't be able to meet them there. You'll pull away. You'll think it's too much. You'll get overwhelmed. But when you show him, with roughness, that you can not only handle it but match it, even surpass it, that's when he feels safe. And isn't that ironic? Roughness creates safety. Not the kind of safety that comes from softness and gentleness, but the kind that comes from knowing he can show you everything. His strength, his vulnerability, his desire. And you won't flinch. You'll meet him head on. That's why when men beg for roughness, they're not just asking for a new position or a little more force. They're asking for reassurance. Reassurance that they don't have to hold back. Reassurance that their passion won't scare you away. Reassurance that in this space with you, they can finally be their fullest, rawest selves. And when you give them that, it creates a bond that lingers long after the moment is over. Because roughness, when it's done right, leaves a mark. not just on the body, but on the mind. So when we talk about rough positions, we're not just talking about mechanics. We're talking about the psychology that fuels them. Men beg for roughness because it represents something bigger. It's freedom, it's permission, it's validation, it's intimacy disguised as chaos. And once you understand that, you'll see that the desire for roughness isn't random. It's deeply rooted in who they are. And that's why men crave it so much. Because it's never just about the position. It's about the experience of being completely consumed. When we start talking about the first rough position men beg for, what we're really looking at is something I call the dominance factor. And here's the thing. This is not about ego in the way most people think. It's not just about a man wanting to feel like the king of the jungle or wanting to prove something. It's about a much deeper wiring in him, a primal instinct that gets activated when he's in a position that screams power, strength, and control. You see, men don't always walk around feeling as powerful as they try to appear. They project confidence. They play the role, but beneath it, there's often pressure, doubt, insecurity. So when he begs for a position where dominance is at the center, what he's begging for is the chance to step into a role where all of those doubts vanish. In that moment, there's no questioning himself. There's no hesitation. It's pure instinct, pure action. That's why dominance is so intoxicating to him. Think about what dominance communicates in the heat of the moment. It's not just that he's on top, or that he's stronger, or that he's holding you in place. It's what that symbolizes. To him, it's a declaration. I've got you. I'm in control. You can let go because I'm steering this. And whether he realizes it or not, that satisfies something he's been trained his whole life to crave. The validation that he is capable, that he is strong enough, that he can take charge and not falter. But here's where it gets interesting. The dominance factor isn't one-sided. It's not only about what it does for him, it's also about what it does for you. Because when a man is in a dominant position and you respond to it with equal intensity, when you meet his fire with fire, it feeds him in a way that nothing else does. He sees that he's not just playing the role of leader, he's genuinely bringing something out of you. And that reaction, your passion in response to his dominance, is what tells him he's doing more than just going through motions. He's making you feel something unforgettable. Now, let's go a layer deeper. Rough dominance doesn't just excite him physically, it creates a form of intimacy that feels almost addictive. Because in those moments, he's not just proving strength, he's proving devotion. He's saying with his body what he might not say with words, that he's willing to give all of himself to that moment, to protect, to lead, to pour his energy into you fully. For him, that's a release. For you, it's a reassurance. And that combination is electric. Of course, dominance can show up in many ways. It might be the roughness of how he grips you, the way he pins you down, the force with which he moves you, or even the simple act of not asking for permission in the heat of passion. These moments of unapologetic decisiveness, Aleph decisiveness, are thrilling to him because they're so different from the hesitation and second guessing he often experiences in daily life. Dominance is clarity, it's certainty, it's intensity. And in that clarity, he finds freedom. But here's the part that most people miss. Men don't beg for dominance simply because they want to dominate. They beg for it because they want to experience that energy exchange. They want to feel what it's like when they unleash all of that power. And it's not too much, when instead it's matched and magnified by you. That's when dominance becomes more than physical. It becomes a dance. It's not just him pressing forward. It's you pushing back, meeting him at that edge, and showing him you're not afraid of his fire. And that's what keeps him coming back for more. If you've ever seen the way a man's eyes change when he's in that position, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's this rawness, this hunger, but also this relief. Relief that for once, he doesn't have to hold back. Relief that he doesn't have to apologize for wanting more, for going harder, for letting his primal side take over. In that moment, he doesn't feel judged, he doesn't feel questioned. He feels accepted in his most unfiltered form. And that acceptance, through dominance, is one of the most powerful gifts you can give him. This is why, when men beg for this kind of roughness, it's not shallow. It's not just about having a wild story to tell or checking a fantasy off a list. It's about a psychological need that runs deep. It's about being allowed to step into the fullest version of himself and having someone meet him there with no fear, no resistance, just equal passion. That's the dominance factor. And that's why the first rough position men beg for is always tied to power. Because when he feels dominant, he doesn't just feel in control of you, he feels in control of himself. Now, this is where things start to get really interesting, because the third rough position men beg for isn't about dominance at all. In fact, it's about the exact opposite, the flip of power. And if you've ever wondered why a man who seems so confident, so in control, suddenly craves being pinned down, held, or even overpowered, this is where the mystery unravels. Here's the truth: men are constantly expected to lead. At work, with friends, in relationships, they're told, either directly or indirectly, that their value lies in being decisive, strong, and reliable. And yes, there's a part of him that enjoys that role. But deep down, that constant pressure builds a kind of fatigue. And behind closed doors, in those most intimate moments, he longs for a taste of something different. He wants to feel what it's like not to lead, but to surrender. Now, most men will never admit this out loud. They'll joke about it, they'll bury it, but they won't come right out and say it. Why? Because the idea of giving up control feels like weakness in their mind. And men are conditioned to hide weakness. But in reality, what they're craving isn't weakness, it's freedom. Freedom from being the one who always has to know the next move. Freedom from being the one carrying the burden. Freedom from constantly projecting strength. So when he begs for positions where the power dynamic is flipped, he's not asking to be made small. He's asking to finally be allowed to let go. Imagine the effect that has on him. For the first time, he's not the one driving the moment. He's the one being driven. He's not the one deciding how far things go. You are. He's not the one holding back to make sure he's not too much. You're the one setting the pace, the intensity, the edge. And in that reversal, something extraordinary happens. He feels liberated. He gets to experience a vulnerability that's terrifying and thrilling all at once. The beauty of this flip of power is that it creates a kind of balance. Because when you take charge in those rough moments, whether it's pushing him down, holding him still, or showing him that he's not the only one who can bring intensity, you're telling him something without words. You don't always have to carry it all. You don't always have to be the strong one. You don't always have to control everything. With me, you can let go. And that message sinks deeper than any physical pleasure ever could. What's fascinating is that this doesn't diminish him. In fact, it often makes him feel even more connected, because now he's experiencing something rarer: trust. For him to truly surrender, he has to trust you. He has to believe that if he lets go, you won't take advantage, you won't judge, you won't see him as less. And when he feels that trust is safe with you, it bonds him to you in a way that's unshakable. Because now, you're not just the person who excites him. You're the person who understands him on a level most people never will. Let's be honest, there's also a part of him that just finds it wildly exciting to be flipped into that role. It shocks his system. It's unexpected. It's a break from routine. And we all know how intoxicating the unexpected can be. When you take charge in that way, it's almost like you're showing him a hidden side of yourself. A side that's bold, fearless, unapologetic. And that thrills him because it makes him feel like he's discovering new depths in you every time. Now, some people hear this and think, "Wet, are men really into that?" And the answer is yes, more than you think. Because while they might not always ask for it, they're silently begging for it. The flip of power doesn't threaten his masculinity, it enhances it. Because he's not losing who he is. He's expanding who he gets to be. And when he gets to explore both sides, the dominant and the submissive, it doesn't weaken him. It makes the whole experience richer, deeper, more alive. And here's the part that most people never talk about. When you flip the power dynamic, it creates reciprocity. It reminds him that intimacy is not just about him giving or him taking. It's about exchange. Sometimes he leads, sometimes you lead. Sometimes he controls, sometimes he surrenders. And in that dance, both of you discover new layers of passion, and new levels of connection, and new ways of surprising each other. So when a man begs for this third rough position, what he's really begging for isn't just the thrill of being overpowered. It's the relief of being understood. It's the comfort of knowing that with you, he doesn't always have to be the one steering the ship. Sometimes, he can just let go and trust that you'll take him somewhere unforgettable. And that's why the flip of power is one of the most intoxicating, rough positions a man can experience. Because it gives him permission to surrender without losing himself. When we move into the fourth rough position men beg for, it's not just about physical movement anymore. It's about what happens when the balance of power shifts completely. This is the space where traditional roles are reversed, where the script flips entirely, and where a man gets to experience something he may never admit out loud: the thrill of submission. Now, for most men, the idea of being submissive is not something they parade around talking about. They might joke about it with friends. They might fantasize about it privately, but rarely will they bring it to the surface. Why? Because submission has been conditioned into them as weakness, as giving up, as something that makes them less masculine. But here's the paradox: the rough positions where he surrenders are often the ones that make him feel more alive, more connected, and yes, even more masculine in a different way. Here's why. When a man takes on the submissive role in a rough dynamic, he's not saying, "I can't handle being strong." What he's saying is, "I trust you enough to let you take control." And that level of trust is enormous. Think about it. Men spend most of their lives being told they need to lead, to decide, to direct, to perform. And in those private, raw moments, to be able to hand over the reins and say, "I don't have to be in charge right now. I can let you take me there." That's liberating for him in a way very few things are. And what makes this even more powerful is the intensity of the exchange. Because in submission, he's not losing himself. He's amplifying himself. He's exploring a different side, a hidden side, one he doesn't get to show the world. And when he allows you to see it, it's not just exciting. It's intimate. It's his way of saying, "You're the only one I'd let see this part of me." That's a huge deal, because it means that for him, this isn't casual. This is trust on the deepest level. When a man begs for this role reversal, what he's really asking for is to feel consumed. He wants you to flip the script, to take over, to show him that passion doesn't always have to come from his side. Sometimes the most exhilarating thing for him is when you decide how it's going to go, when you set the pace, when you push him past his limits and make him feel completely claimed. That's what drives him wild. And here's the fascinating part: this reversal doesn't weaken the attraction. It strengthens it. Because when you take charge and he allows himself to be led, it creates a deeper respect. It shows him that you're not afraid of your own power, that you're willing to step into it fully. And that excites him more than anything. Because now, he sees you not just as someone he desires, but as someone he can surrender to, without fear, without shame. Of course, there's a thrill factor too. Rough submission shocks his system. It's unpredictable, it's raw, and it strips away routine. He's used to being in charge. He's used to having control. So when you flip the power, you introduce chaos into the structure he's built his identity on. And that chaos in intimacy is intoxicating. It wakes him up. It makes him feel things he doesn't get to feel anywhere else in his life. But let's not miss the emotional layer. Because beneath all the fire and intensity, what he's really experiencing is relief. Relief that he doesn't always have to be the one steering. Relief that someone else can carry the weight, if only for a moment. Relief that he doesn't have to perform strength. He can just be, and you'll still want him. Maybe even more. And that relief is a rare gift for him, because he doesn't get it anywhere else. What's beautiful about these flipped power dynamics is that they don't replace his strength, they expand it. Because once he's experienced the vulnerability of being overpowered, of surrendering in that raw way, he comes back to dominance more connected, more passionate, more present. It creates a cycle, a give and take, that deepens the whole experience for both of you. And maybe that's why men secretly beg for this, even if they don't say it. Because when the power flips, when he becomes the one being held down, or pushed, or controlled, it doesn't strip him of masculinity. It strips him of the armor. And underneath, what you find isn't weakness. It's a man who trusts you enough to let himself be fully seen. And that's why the fourth rough position men beg for is the one that flips the power. Because in surrender, he doesn't lose himself, he finds a new side of himself he didn't even know was waiting to be set free. Now, when we get to the fifth rough position men beg for, this is where things go to the edge. This is where the line between pain and pleasure gets blurred, and that's exactly why it becomes so irresistible. You see, most of us live our lives trying to stay comfortable. We want security, we want predictability, we want to avoid discomfort. But in intimacy, comfort isn't always what people crave. In fact, it's often the opposite. Men beg for rough positions that push them into that space where it's almost too much, where it stings, where it shocks the system, and yet it feels so good they can't help but want more. There's something primal about this. Pain, in the right context, heightens everything. Think about the way a scratch down the back or a bite on the shoulder feels. It hurts for a second, but that hurt sends adrenaline rushing through the body. It wakes up nerve endings that were half asleep. It makes the moment feel dangerous, unpredictable, alive. And that's what men chase when they beg for these positions. The sensation of being pushed right to the edge of their threshold without crossing it. Now, what makes this so intoxicating isn't just the physical sensation. It's the psychological game happening behind it. When you take him to that point where pain and pleasure collide, you're showing him that you know exactly how to handle him. You know how to push him without breaking him. You know how to play with that boundary. And that makes him feel completely seen. Because underneath it all, what he's craving isn't just roughness. It's mastery. He wants to feel like you know how to take him further than he'd take himself. And here's what most people don't realize. Men aren't begging for this because they're masochists or because they secretly enjoy suffering. They're begging for it because it intensifies everything. When you add that edge of pain, it makes the pleasure more explosive. The contrast is what makes it unforgettable. It's like turning up the volume on passion until it's almost unbearable, and then releasing it in a rush that feels 10 times stronger. That's the high he's chasing. But there's also a deeper layer. When he lets you push him into that space, he's demonstrating trust. He's saying, I'm willing to let you take me to that edge, because I believe you know how far to go. That's not just lust. That's intimacy. It's a declaration that he feels safe enough with you to expose his limits, and safe enough to let you dance right along that line. And that's rare. That's not something he gives to just anyone. What's also fascinating is how this edge play feeds his desire for intensity. A man doesn't just want connection. He wants impact. He wants to feel like every touch, every movement leaves a mark. That's why he begs for those rough positions where the aftermath lingers. The sore muscles, the scratch marks, the bruise on his hip. Those aren't just physical reminders. They're emotional ones. They tell him, I was fully alive in that moment. I felt everything. And that kind of memory doesn't fade quickly. Now, for some, it might sound extreme, this idea of mixing pain with pleasure. But think about how it mirrors life itself. The moments that change us, the ones we remember, are rarely the comfortable ones. They're the moments that tested us, that stretched us, that left a mark. And in intimacy, it's the same. Men beg for these rough positions because they want the experience to matter. They want it to stand out. They want it to leave them different than when it began. And here's the beautiful irony. When you're pushing him toward that edge, when you're biting, scratching, holding, or pulling, what he feels is not just the pain or the pleasure. What he feels is your passion. He feels that you're not afraid of him, not afraid of his body, not afraid of intensity. And that turns him on more than anything else. Because now he knows he's with someone who's not just willing to go there, but eager to go there. Someone who won't back down from the fire, but will lean into it with him. This is why men beg for that mix of roughness. Because in the end, it's not just about the positions themselves. It's about the experience of teetering on the edge, of feeling consumed, of losing control, and then finding it again in a more powerful way. It's about testing limits and discovering new depths of passion. And that's why the fifth rough position men beg for is always about the edge of pain and the height of pleasure. Because in that place, he doesn't just feel desire, he feels completely, overwhelmingly alive. At this point, we've talked about why men crave roughness. We've explored dominance. We've looked at submission. We've gone into the thrill of the edge. But here's the truth that ties it all together. None of those positions mean anything without communication and confidence. Because what men are really begging for underneath every request isn't just the physical act, it's the feeling of being with someone who is unapologetically confident in their own desire and unafraid to speak it. See, roughness without communication is reckless. It's empty. It can cross boundaries. It can cause disconnection. But roughness with communication becomes electric because then it's not just about what's happening in the moment. It's about the trust that builds leading up to it. When a man begs for a rough position, what he's really begging for is a partner who will meet him there, not just blindly, but intentionally. Someone who will say, "Here's what excites me, here's what turns me on, here's how far I want to go, and I want to know the same from you." That kind of honesty is what makes the difference between an experience that fades away and one that lingers in the mind for years. And here's the thing. Confidence in this context doesn't mean being loud or aggressive. It doesn't mean you have to be outrageous or shocking. Confidence is simply the ability to own your desire without apology, to look at him and say, "I know what I want, and I'm not afraid to ask for it." That energy, for a man, is irresistible, because most men are terrified of being too much. They're worried that if they unleash everything they're craving, it'll overwhelm you, scare you, or push you away. But when you stand in front of him and show that not only can you handle his intensity, you have your own, it sets him free. That's what men are begging for. They're begging for that freedom. They're begging for the reassurance that they don't have to hold back, that they don't have to censor themselves, that they don't have to perform a version of passion that feels safe but watered down. What makes the experience unforgettable isn't just the act itself. It's knowing that they are with someone who won't flinch at their full truth. Someone who won't just allow them to unleash it, but who will bring their own truth to the table too. And when you combine communication with confidence, something magical happens. You both get to play without fear. You get to explore the roughness, the edges, the intensity, but you do it knowing you're in it together. He doesn't feel judged, you don't feel uncertain, and the result is an intimacy that is far deeper than just the physical. Because now, every scratch, every bite, every grip, every push, it's not just passion, it's a language you've built together. It's two people saying, "I know you. I trust you. I want this with you." And now, let's be honest, most men will never sit you down and say, "I'm begging you to be more confident with me." They won't say, "I want you to communicate your fantasies." What they will do is hint, they'll test, they will beg for roughness in small ways because they're hoping you'll meet them there. They're hoping you'll show them that it's safe to bring out the parts of themselves they keep hidden. And when you do, when you respond not with hesitation, but with boldness, not with fear, but with clarity, you give them exactly what they've been chasing. And don't underestimate how transformative that is. Because a man who feels he can trust you with his rawest desires, a man who knows he can beg for intensity without being shamed, is a man who will connect with you in ways he won't connect with anyone else. That bond is addictive because it's rare. Most men never get that level of permission in their lives. They live on the surface, they hold back, they compromise. But when you bring both confidence and communication into the mix, you take him out of that pattern. You give him something real. So yes, men beg for rough positions. They beg for dominance, for submission, for the edge of pain and the thrill of power. But all of that is just the surface. What they're truly begging for is you. Your voice, your boldness, your honesty. your willingness to go there with them. And when you bring that to the table, that's when fantasies stop being fantasies and start becoming the kind of experiences that leave both of you changed forever. And that's why the biggest thing men beg for isn't really the roughness itself. It's the confidence and communication that make the roughness unforgettable.